Let's talk about authoritarian movements. Uh, every authoritarian movement eventually reaches the same conclusion, which is that facts are dangerous. Journalists who operate without restrictions are dangerous. Books are very dangerous. And if Trump had his way, like many authoritarians, there are stories he wishes you would never hear about, books he wishes were never published, and reporters he would love to just stop doing their job. And this is now becoming visible in how this administration is using the power of government. According to reporting from the New York Times, several reporters from the Times who write about security concerns involving Donald Trump's new Arab Force One, the Qatari Air Force One plane that Trump was gifted, have now been subpoenaed to testify before a federal grand jury. In some cases, federal agents showed up at the homes of journalists to deliver the subpoenas, of course, to intimidate. And maybe even more extraordinary, follow-up reporting from the New York Times says that White House officials directed FBI Director Kash Patel to oversee the entire investigation after Trump became enraged over reporting about this new plane. And this is, of course, not the way it normally operates. Normally, you have separation between the White House and the FBI. Here we have the White House telling Kash Patel, come to the White House and direct this entire thing from here. Now, every administration that I remember has investigated leaks involving sensitive information. That's part of governing. That's not the issue. The question is, how do you carry out those investigations? And for decades, subpoenaing reporters has been treated as an extraordinary step because journalism depends on sources believing, hey, I can speak to reporters without becoming the target. Because when these reporters are pressured, what is often the goal is to get reporters to give up their sources. And according to the New York Times, normally these leak investigations focus on identifying who in the government disclosed information. And the subpoenas directed at reporters are only used in really rare circumstances when all other investigative avenues have been exhausted. Watching this unfold brought me back to what happened a couple years ago. Maybe new viewers don't know this, but when I had a smaller audience, when my first book came out, the Trump administration pressured Amazon to delist my book along with some other books by left-wing authors. Now they failed. And my first book, The Echo Machine, became a bestseller anyway. But this was a very instructive lesson, which is that power doesn't always announce itself by banning stuff outright. What they often will do is pressure those who distribute the ideas. In the case of my book, it was, we're not banning the book, let's pressure Amazon not to sell it. In the case of journalists and sources, it's let's pressure the journalists to either give up sources or to be scared of even working with sources. We've seen it with law firms and universities. Are you sure you want to represent this client? Are you sure that you want to hire this professor? They do it with television networks. Are you sure you want to be paying to produce this particular show? And you can always explain away the individual episodes, but when you take it all together, there's a very clear pattern, which is make the cost of challenging those in power feel too high to be worth it. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to write this new book, by the way. This book is not about one politician or administration. It's about how do people believe things that aren't true? How is repetition often more persuasive than evidence? And all of those important issues. So as we see these stories unfold, now with the subpoenaing of Times reporters and all of this stuff, these really aren't separate stories. Taken together, pressure on journalists, attacks on independent institutions, attempts to shape the information that even reaches the public, these are all the conditions that hurt facts getting out and foment misinformation succeeding. And when fewer journalists feel free to investigate, when fewer sources believe that they will really be kept safe if they communicate with reporters and all of this stuff, the self-censorship leaves a vacuum where false narratives easily can fill it. So we are now in a situation where I think more than ever, if we're going to have a healthy democracy, We have to have citizens with access to competing ideas. We have to have independent reporting. There must be rigorous investigations. The interview last week that I did with the authors of Regime Change, Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, that's not always the type of interview that performs well and the audience is interested in, but it did really well. And I got so many emails from people saying, David, I had sort of forgotten about good old fashioned investigative journalism. They did investigative journalism for years. They did the work. They have sources. They corroborated. They published it. And not those two New York Times reporters, but now others are being subpoenaed for their reporting about what, quite frankly, is at least potentially a security risk. Trump taking a supposedly free plane from Qatar. If we lose investigative reporting and competing ideas and all of this stuff, the people left deciding what's true are almost always the people with the most power. And right now, that's Donald Trump. And that is absolutely terrifying. Thanks for watching. Check out another one of our videos and make sure to subscribe so YouTube keeps our content in your feed. And if you prefer audio, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or Apple.